I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is James Hughes, and I would like to welcome you to the BIM Project Suite Free Tools presentation. ATG is a platinum level Autodesk software provider. A platinum partner is someone who has the best customer service, best technical support, and best customer retention across authorized resellers. ATG is also the exclusive reseller of CTC tools in the United States. And I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a licensed architect here in the state of Arkansas. I have 13 years of architectural experience. And for the past 4.5 years, I've been an AEC industry specialist with ATG. So my full-time job is helping architects, interior designers, landscape architects, engineers, and contractors with Autodesk software, as well as a number of technical services. When I first learned about the BIM Project Suite, I was excited to learn how powerful the tools are in that suite. And I was also surprised at how many of the tools CTC provides for free. And we'll spend today's webinar introducing these free tools to you out of the BIM Project Suite. I hope you enjoy learning about the capabilities of the free tools in the BIM Project Suite, and they will save you a lot of time and frustration. So what is the BIM Project Suite? The core function of the BIM Project Suite is that it allows users to automate tedious routine tasks, and is currently comprised of 19 tools that allow users to manage large numbers of content files, generate database information, and much, much more, all within the Revit environment. BIM Project Suite is meant for everyday users of all skill levels and used by firms of all sizes. So there are several different CTC tools, some of them geared towards BIM coordinators or BIM managers, but the BIM Project Suite should be, I feel like it should be in the hands of all of your users. So when you install the CTC, by the way, this is the cool tools page here. When you install the CTC BIM Project Suite software, a ribbon like this will show up in your Revit contextual ribbon space. The light green tools are the free tools, the ones that we're going to discuss today. The dark green tools are also free to use, but for 14 days. After that, they do require a paid license to operate, and that paid license is just like any other Autodesk software. It can either be standalone or it can be network-based. So it's kind of the same deal. You just kind of look at what your licensing is like with your existing Autodesk software and probably select a tool probably congruent with that. So when you install CTC tools, it's just one installation that will install the tools on all supported versions of Revit that you have installed. It's actually pretty common for architecture firms and certainly engineering firms to have multiple versions installed on a computer. And so this actually means that you get access to the current year, which would be 2020 in this case, plus the 3 previous years. So if you have Revit 2017, 2018, 2019, and now 2020 installed, one installation of the BIM Project Suite tools will install the tools on all of those versions of Revit. So it makes it really easy to roll out. So there are many features within BIM Project Suite from CTC Software that can help make your drafting and modeling process easier. And we'll explore these free features within the tools during this webinar. BIM Project Suite allows Autodesk Revit users to automate routine tasks, manage large numbers of content files, generate database information, and much more within the Revit environment. Don't be intimidated by the long list of objectives we have here. I think that they will proceed pretty quickly through these. But with Detail Link, we'll discuss how it allows you to get CAD details and typical details into projects as well as images. With Project Link, we'll show you how to get all of your project documents in one library, accessible within the Revit environment. With Quick Select, one of my favorite tools, we'll step through the process of selecting elements that are difficult to get at a really granular level. And probably my favorite tool is actually one of the free ones, which is the Renumbering Tool. With it, we'll examine how to renumber views and details with ease. And then lastly, with Revit Properties, we will look at file information such as which version or year file is it, as well as some other data that is not so easy to surface on a file. Now, let's go ahead and begin a live demonstration. We're going to do most of today here within the Revit software instead of here at PowerPoint, so you can breathe easy here. So let me toggle over to Revit. All right, so I've got just a typical commercial project file open here to sort of noodle around within. And if I click over on the CTC Software tool ribbon up here, after doing one installation, you will have this tab that appears up here. And I've actually got a few different CTC softwares installed. You guys absolutely, if you have not, should take a look at Hive. I can almost recommend it unreservedly, almost no matter what your setup is. And then we're going to be taking a look at the BIM Project Suite, which I've just dragged down here for clarity. And more specifically, these light green tools over here on the left side are going to be the ones that we're discussing. So from here, the very first one we'll take a look at is Detail Link. So I just click on it to start the tool. And all of the CTC tools are kind of modeless. They will run on top of Revit and allow you to click and interact with Revit. Of course, not right now with this one, but you'll see with the Renumbering tool, it will actually gray itself out and allow me to do work on Revit in the background. I could drag it over to the side or onto another monitor and kind of keep it running if it's something that I'm running a lot of processes with. The point of Detail Link is to be able to grab standard AutoCAD details and bring them into a project rapidly. And so, if you've got, typical roofing details or any kind of typical details, and maybe details that you have curated over, 20 years of using AutoCAD, and because you've got that asset library of CAD details, you want to be able to leverage those into Revit. There's a lot of firms that are still transitioning into Revit. And so they've got a good bit of their content in that format still. And there's a lot of people that have a roadmap to transform that content into Revit native content over time, but they still have, large chunks of AutoCAD content. This allows us to do it instead of one at a time, to be able to grab an entire folder structure if we want to do it that way, and get it placed into discrete drafting views that it will create for us. Or we might already have the drafting views created and we can point to them. I should actually be pointing at these options here as I'm talking about this. The one of the more popular ones is this top one here, is to just make it generate a dedicated drafting view automatically for each one of the files that you select, and it will just choose to name it according to the DWG that you have selected. And so if you've already done the work to make the drawing files, in accordance to a view name format, then that one is absolutely the way to go. But oftentimes you're going to get details from a manufacturer. For purposes of this demonstration, just yesterday, I just thought off the top of my head, well, let me run to Siplast and see if they've got some roofing details that I could snag. And sure enough, it is pretty easy to grab a bunch of DWGs from them. So if I wanted to add those into this project here, if we wanted to entertain this being a Siplast roof and start looking at those drafting details, then what I can do is choose Add Detail Files up here in the top. And this is a two-part window. You can see we've got two different fields here. The very first one here is basically a finding window. I said that kind of strangely, a finding window. And then we have a selection window down here. This lets us kind of do one step of curation of choosing or unchoosing some of the files that we maybe don't need to have a dedicated view for. But we'll choose Browse. And on the desktop yesterday, I created one for Siplast, giving them a shout out here by brand name since they had their content available here. And I just downloaded this. It took me no more than a minute to check all of these boxes and hit download, and it created a zip file for me. But after I do something quick like that, I might look at this list and say, well, let me select all of these. So it's highlighted all of them, except I don't think we're going to use whatever this P Pro is. So I might not need that detail. And if I've got another one with P Pro listed in it, or P Flex, maybe we don't need that one, then I can use this time right now to actually deselect those. And so then I will choose to add those selected files. This is a step that people that are brand new to the Detail Link maybe don't always get, because if I just hit OK, it would have dropped my folder selection entirely and I'd have to redo it again. So do make sure that you select them. And it shows me that I've got these 8 files selected along with their pathing to that. It is going to choose to bring them in as a relative path. I checked that, but it's real easy to change if you decide that you want that to be an absolute path. All you would do is go under the insert ribbon, under your link manager, and you can just select all of them at once and change them to dedicated or to a absolute path if you need to. So we hit OK, and all of those files are now selected to be brought in. Now I need to choose whether or not I want them to get a dedicated view per each one, where it just uses that name. I can tell I'm not really happy with the naming convention that Siplast used. And so instead of doing it that way, well, let me mention the second one here. If I've already created the views for them, I just don't have the content yet, or maybe I'm putting several things under one view, then I could select this middle option here. And then as it prompts me for each of these 8, it will ask me which view it's going to need to land on. But I'm going to choose this last one, which allows me an opportunity to retype the name so that I can actually name the view as I go. A lot of you guys know exactly what you would choose here for DWG options, but I'll pretend like this is a Revit fundamentals class for just a minute here and kind of explain my approach to making choices with importing here. We do have the option to either link or import. And if you guys have been using Revit for more than 5 minutes, in your minds, you're probably thinking, well, it shouldn't even be a choice. It should just be link, because that is undisputedly best practice. However, there are times that you do need to import in DWGs. It is the exception rather than the rule. The real danger there, obviously, is that you're going to have users import in a bunch of standard details, look at it and say, well, those are terrible arrowheads, or that's the wrong text. I need to change that. And then that beginner user clicks on it to make the change, and it acts as one big block, and they think, oh, but I know what to do. Let me just explode this. Yes, there we go. Now I can make the change. And they have just dropped your model hygiene through the floor there with that terrible choice that they made. So normally you're going to want to leave that as link, and so I will. With your positioning, you really just have 2 choices with paper space. You can either have it observe what is the origin of the AutoCAD file and bring that to your project origin. Normally that doesn't matter. Normally I'll put it on center to center just so that I make sure that it fills up the screen whenever it gets brought in. I don't have to type ZE for zoom extents to search for it. And with colors, I almost never choose to preserve them. I don't need magenta lines and green lines coming in from AutoCAD. So I will convert those to black and white. With layers, it normally sounds good to choose all layers, but I can tell you, particularly with floor plans, when you bring those in, those were created by a professional, probably much like yourself. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times in my floor plan model space, I have brought in elevation views. I brought in all kinds of stuff because I don't always have the best drawing hygiene in AutoCAD. But just to make any kind of choices, you got to bring in multiple views. And I normally end up having a bunch of stuff that I put on layers to make them disappear. And then I freeze those layers. And that way I won't accidentally end up printing them. And so I kind of normally say you should probably just trust that somebody's a professional and they chose the correct visible layers that you should see. And then only if you don't see, if you feel like you are missing content, would I re-import it and switch that to all. And then import units auto detect. Revit has actually never failed me with auto detecting units. AutoCAD almost always gets it wrong. If you get a survey from a surveyor or a civil engineer and they're using decimal feet, it will throw AutoCAD for a loop, and you will end up shrinking things by 1/12 or multiplying it by times 12 all the time. With Revit, just leave it on auto detect. If it somehow ever fails you, then yes, you could choose which unit type you might want to specify. The other one here is just for images. I'll do that, I guess, as a secondary one here. I'll bring in a bunch of images next. Of course, I could do them all at once. I could choose add image files and have it do both, but I'll kind of save that for a second round here. So I'm going to choose to rename each of these as it brings them in. I click import link. I could toggle over to an existing view. I mean, it's doing them one at a time. But here, what I'm going to do is just kind of trim out and say, well, this is a curb detail for rigid. So let me just kind of, I'll just call the detail curb rigid. Hit OK. The next one will be an insulated curb rigid, I think is what I'll name it. So I'm basically removing a number in front of it, removing whatever 2030 product number that is. And here we've got an expansion joint. I like to spell it out with 2 T's. Expansion joint, roof, rigid. I'm going to guess all of these are going to be rigid. I'll probably erase this one because it's a P-Guard product. So let me actually just put erase in front of it. All right, we've almost got our 8 in here. Then we'll do roof drain rigid. May already have one of those. Nope. Sump to drain. We're going to erase that one. Scupper rigid. Overflow scupper rigid. All right, and then we get an audit here, which normally when I see something like this, I think there were errors. This actually is just telling me everything came in. So it's a good news. No, it's a clean bill of health here. We hit OK. We can click on close. I could leave this running here actually, but we're going to see that these came in underneath the drafting views. And these that say erase next to them, you know, I can make good on that. And very quickly, if I open these up, yeah, I expect to see it in black and white. At the 12-inch equals a foot is the scale that it shows here. I can make a change to that. Obviously, that's a function of Revit here. Now, if I need to change text work or arrowheads or anything like that, I do not have an opportunity to explode this, thankfully, because it's a link. I actually need to open up the AutoCAD files themselves and make that change there. And then that will push it one way as an update into my Revit. That is best practice to do it that way. If you're going to keep the originals and make a modification that's specific to your project, then most firms are going to create a duplicate folder and name it specifically for, you know, either the date or the project change that you're invoking on it, so that you keep the originals, but you've now got new corrected AutoCAD files to be able to link to. So we've already formed the link here and my work is done. If someone needs to make a change, they just jump into AutoCAD and that will update here in my view. As I mentioned before, if that needs to change, whether or not it's relative or absolute, you just go to Insert, Manage Links, go to our, let's see here, go to my CAD formats here, and these are all relative path here. So I can just select these guys and make them absolute, and it'll go ahead and make that change and map them that way. But I'm going to put them back real quick here. All right, so that's how we can use Detail Link to bring in our case, 8 different views. And then I pared that down to some of them that matter to our project. If we want to deal with images, it also brings those in rapidly. Great example of this for architects is going to be if you ever do like a roof remodel or re-roof project, or you know, existing conditions that you're documenting. It's great to just show up on site with your smartphone and take a bajillion pictures of, or punch lists, to take a whole bunch of pictures of existing conditions. And then you can bring those image files into Revit, throw them on a drafting view, and then use Revit's great markup tools on top of it with their text work and dimensions and such, and point to all the work, or use, you know, kind of homemade keynotes or annotations to point to all of the work. Saves so much time over drawing up conditions. In our case, I chose logo files. I just downloaded a bunch earlier today. So I can choose Add Image Files. And here we're going to browse for a folder called Cars on my desktop. And also, if I created subfolders from this, I could choose to have it automatically harvest things from subfolders. So if I just have, you know, a crazy amount of images, this will grab every one of them, select them all, and add them to the selected files. That's an important kind of small step there. I approve of all 18. And for image options, there's a lot less to choose from. I mean, you can choose, you know, if the placement's going to be in the middle of the object, or, you know, oriented to a corner of it here, and then choose the resolution, which really is just going to determine the size on paper. All of these logos, I guarantee you, are going to be different size from one another. So I'll probably have some manual work to get them stretched or sized differently. I'll just leave it at 100 and choose Import Link. And I don't have a view created yet, but I can choose, you know what, actually, I'm going to back up a step. I'll hit the X and we'll choose this middle option. So we'll pretend that we're going to put them on an existing drafting view, even though I haven't created that yet. And so I'll create a new view name, and we'll just call it car logos. Hit OK, and that one goes there. And now it should show up in here. Yeah, here's car logos under existing view name. Unfortunately, I do have an extra 2 clicks to put on these to tell, because it's wanting to go to the exit view, tell it car logos under each of these. Still, not overflow scupper. I'll never find it if I put it there. Still going to save a lot of time as opposed to going to insert and running through that workflow of manually inserting the images one at a time with that view already open. Here, I didn't even have a view created yet, and I've created one. It's not even open, and I am throwing things in the middle of that. So I expect that when I open this up, I'm going to have a bunch of car logos all exactly centered in that space. I shouldn't be calling my shots here, but that's what I expect to see. So many car logos. All right, I did nothing wrong. This is all good news. It was able to successfully link/import. In the case of images, you can't link them in Revit, unfortunately. That means that each one of these images is bloating my Revit project. So I do need to be careful and not just upload every client logo that I've ever worked with into my template file. That's not a good play to do that. Even though with logos, they're probably going to be on the small side. Don't want to do that with renderings or anything like that. So we'll hit OK. It was able to bring those into a view called car logos. I see it over here in the project browser. Let me close this. And if I go in car logos, hey, they're all centered up here. So I do need to, grab these out and make a grid. Look, we got some kind of fancy cars going on here. Some of these I've only seen in video games. But anyways, you can arrange, you could put in reference planes and create, maybe that one doesn't belong in here, and create a nice arrangement of these logos. And again, pretend that they're pictures from your iPhone if that's kind of the workflow that you might use for this. But anytime that you might need a bunch of images to document existing conditions, this is going to be a great tool for you to be able to drag in those 100 pictures you took on site and then make a choice of which ones actually you need to point to for work's sake. So let me open up Detail Link one last time and see if there were any other options that I needed to mention. Also, if you guys have questions as I go, all you guys are on mute, and I do appreciate you kind of conducting radio etiquette here and just letting me ramble on. But when you've got questions, please put them in the chat here at the end of this, or as I'm looking around, I'll look over in chat and see if there's something I can answer for you. All right, so we talked through all of the DWG options. Up here, I mean, you've really just got 2 main action items for adding files, either AutoCAD files or image files. You've got 3 ways of bringing them into a view. And then here, these choices, hopefully you've already got some reps in with making these decisions about how you want to import them in. Let me take just a second and talk about, and you're going to see these same options at the top of all of the CTC tools. If you want to learn how to use Detail Link, if after I finish this this presentation, you immediately forget how you can bring in 50 AutoCAD files, just click on this videos link and it will take you to CTC Tools YouTube channel, and they've already done the work of curating videos that pertain to their particular project. So if I click on this video, it will open up however many videos that they have curated that pertain to Detail Link. And in some cases, they've got workflow videos that tell you, they may touch on 4 pieces of software on how to do a process. And so Detail Link might appear kind of deeper in that stack. But all of these, this is, how I learned to use these tools as well until I had some more experience with them. If you click on the help button here, it will treat you to a PDF. Not everybody learns well from a PDF, but this is hypertext linked here. And so you can actually, if you were to, I'm 70 something pages deep in it. If you go to the table of contents at the top and you want to learn about Detail Link, you just click here. And it even has use cases for how you can utilize the software. So that's what happens if you hit help. Videos, if you're more of a visual learner, that's the way to go. For me as an architect, that's the way to go. And then if you uncover something that's broken, or if the software doesn't appear to be working correctly, then you could click on support, and that will actually lead you down a path to opening up a support ticket with ATG and kind of getting you a direct course to resolution on that. If you hit this down arrow here, there are two other features that show up that aren't in this main list up here. And that is requesting a feature. If Detail Link, brings in CAD files like a dream, and it brings in image files like a dream, but you wish there was an option for it to automatically grid the image files, which is what I was manually doing. I would request a feature and say, hey, it'd be great if it did this. And CTC loves this kind of feedback because it kind of proves to them that you're plugged into the tool and that you have things that you would like to see it do. There's things that they can improve for you. And likewise with reporting bugs, they love the ability to be able to correct the software and make it behave if you have discovered a way to make it not behave for you. Or they might be able to dig in and find out maybe a setting that you've got incorrect there. So those two features, you do have to drill down one layer by clicking the down arrow. Other than that, Detail Link's a pretty straightforward tool. And so with that, I will move on to our next free tool that I wanted to talk about. And that one is Project Link. So not Detail Link, but Project Link. And Project Link solves a problem that not many architecture firms are successfully solving. I've seen a few engineering firms, and just kind of getting exposure to what the industry is doing. But basically, your firm or your institution has rich institutional knowledge, but it is more often than not that information is siloed. And so you've got maybe a BIM practices document that's been carefully authored, but that is in the hands of one person and then maybe some new people, but it may not be easily accessible to everyone. And so, basically the idea of Project Link is that you can have a database that is built that is tied to a particular project. And whenever you open up Project Link, I can find any kind of extra data other than the contract documents. So if there is product data, that's going to serve me well later on in the project life cycle as I'm having to do, review shop drawings and, and just kind of make that approval process of comparing it to manufacturer's information. And then also it's helpful for BIM standards and it's helpful for your firm standards. Obviously you can just make PDFs or DOC files and distribute those to your team members. But Project Link, kind of the beauty of it, let me go ahead and fire it up here, is that you can create one source for it and it's accessible right here within Revit. And so I can actually just kind of leave this over here, or if you're like me and you've got 3 monitors, then you just drag it over here to Alaska and put it on the left-hand monitor and pull up a library file. Now, right now, nothing is pulled up, but basically the project manager for this file, they're going to be really peeved when they see all these car logos in here that have nothing to do with the building. But they've already created a library of information. So if I click on this down arrow under library, you could click on new and make that choice between whether or not it's going to be a project library or a file library. A project library is going to create the file structure of the database and it's going to tie it to the .rvt file. The Revit project itself will contain the database container file. Now it's not going to inflate the size of your Revit project because it's really just going to be a bunch of addresses. It's just going to point to files and to websites. And you could also choose to make that a file library, which would almost always be located on your network server. And that one is accessible to anybody, even people that aren't in your particular project or don't even have access to your project. And so a file library is a great place to be able to situate or house company standards and things like that. Of course, your project managers may see fit to have that baked into each of their projects anyways. It may become part of the template, in which case it might be a project library. If you choose one and you decide it's not situated the way you want, it is really no big deal to just simply choose save as and then save it as a different one. So in our case, it's already created. We'll go to open, and in this case, it's a project library. So there's already one tied to this Revit file. So I'll click on that and it opens up the tree structure that's been created. This is expandable. There's actually so much stuff in here. I would be scrolling quite a bit to find it all, but you could choose to expand all and it will open everything up. Let me collapse that back real quick. The better way, once you've created a significant project library, and you should, I mean, it shouldn't just be a couple of products and a one document for how we do things. Hopefully over time, you are expanding the information. And once I show you one of the particular things that this tool does, you'll probably be more inclined to kind of work within this. But if I'm looking for something in particular, if there is, furniture that's been placed within this project here, then there's also tags that can be assigned to different documents. Now, the documents that we have inside of this database can be really any kind. It can be a PDF, it can be a Microsoft Word document, it can be a SketchUp file, it could be really any kind of file, because this is just a database container. It's not a Revit specific database. And so if I'm after information on nibs, and I start doing a search, you saw how fast it truncated that list down out of hundreds of files that would have shown up here. I can see National Institute of Building Sciences, and this is a web link. I can see that globe, with the chain link on that. So if I double click this, then it's going to direct me directly to the National Institute of Building Sciences website. From here, I could, I guess, check out a different standard that I wanted to look into. But it doesn't have to be a web link. Web links are going to be probably the majority of what you put into a project link library, but also you can have standards documents, underneath the, let me clear the search here. Underneath the standards documentation, someone's taken the time to build out 12 sections and break each one into kind of a digestible piece in different sections of what our company standards are. And I'm sure that these also have some tags associated with them. And so, if I go back to that nibs example, because I know it will return a value here, I can actually expand this out to show tags that have been assigned to this, because I might not, and I won't remember National Institute of Building Sciences as a search. I just think of nibs. And so if you know that there's a common vernacular way of looking something up, then you're able to, change or add to those tags. And you might need to, edit some of these tags and add that information in. If you need to, besides changing your library, you can make it to where you can make edits to it by clicking edit. And I can have this National Institute of Building Sciences selected, excuse me, and choose to edit that link. And here I could go and add more tags to it. So I might add a standards tag to it. Hit OK. And now that will show up there. You've got the ability to put in a description. Don't use this. It is out of date. It's not. I'm just making commentary here. So if I choose that, now when I mouse over it, it yells at me, don't use this, it's out of date. So you can actually have information feedback directly when someone hovers over something. And then also we've got PDFs here that are located on a network path. And so if I wanted to add to the library, I've got 3 different ways I can do that. I can link to files, which is what they've done here with PDFs. I could create another web link. If I've browsed deeper into the nibs library and actually found, example of free standards, one I didn't have to pay for or something like that, then I might either update that link, which you saw in the edit, or I might add another link by add web links, or you can choose add to link files, and then you could add files, browse to a folder structure, choose, I don't have any selected here, but you would select them, add them to the bottom here, and then those would be brought into your library. Here, just like you would rename or reorganize content in a Windows Explorer environment, you can still drag this to other places or select inside of here, and then you can right click and you can delete this folder. In some cases, we've got the ability to edit and rename it. So if we wanted to change that name, So we've got the ability to, link to documents and also to web services. If it did that, then that's kind of like a, well, that's pretty neat that it has unsiloed all that information, so somebody doesn't have to dig it out of their emails, and that's pretty helpful. But it also does one other great thing that I think is really awesome. If I want to add to this library, I can choose Add, and this bottom one here is Family Web Links. If I choose this, what it's going to do is look through the project at every family that's loaded into it. And anytime that the URL parameter type has been created, it is going to harvest that data and create a data point within the database to point out to it. And it's going to name it for me and create it. So it's going to go by the family name, then the type name, and then the parameter name. And so I might have, chair content that actually has multiple types. And so each type will probably have a unique URL that it points to, and it's going to catalog that. It's not just going to grab one chair and use the type parameter for URL. If there's any other family parameter that has a URL inside of it, it will harvest that and use it. So if you've created shared parameters for your company where you are already documenting URLs, it will harvest that and put that into the database automatically. And what that, if you utilize this, if you really leverage this, it will be it will make you want to add to your family's library and start baking in URLs that will help you when it comes time for reviewing shop drawings, to be able to pull up that information on the manufacturer's site and not have to, hopefully you're not picking up old suites books or anything like that, but can kind of keep you on the internet for getting the data that you need. All right. So Project Link is a great way for you to take all of the other institutional data that needs to be accessible to your design team, both product data as well as standards data. Maybe even you've got documents in there about, how to bill your time. I mean, there's all kinds of institutional data that we see pumped into projects here, or created as a file library that's placed on the server. All right, that is Project Link. It's pretty easy to use as well. I did kind of run across that, there were some things grayed out that I couldn't access at first, and I needed to actually enable this edit function before I had access to some other things. One of the things I didn't talk about is that you can actually do color coding on these. Um, and so you saw here that you can apply text color or background colors to this. If I wanted certain types of data entries to read with either color text or color background, it can make it visually fast to scan a folder and find pertinent information that's, purple colored or whatever, rather than having to do it by search, which search is powerful in and of itself. But if you can color code it, that's kind of another layer of control. If you can do tags, then I think you're really going to find what you're looking for if you leverage that feature. All right, so that is Project Link. Incidentally, in my estimation, or in my book, I think that these are getting better as we go here too. The next one I want to talk to you about is Quick Select. Let me get off these car logos are kind of funny to me. That doesn't seem like a typical architectural project for me. Quick Select solves a problem of being able to very quickly and very granular way make selections that with out of the box Revit you are not able to make. It takes some of the ideas of creating filters. And when I ask around, when I'm doing Revit trainings, I ask whether or not people are using filters. And normally people just kind of shrug and are like, I don't know. And then half the time, about 50% of the time, one power user is like, yep, we use them. And what they really mean is they use them, to make sure that something shows up correctly or is filtered out. And so they are not commonly used. And so your average user is not utilizing filters to be able to see or select things. And Quick Select makes it to where someone with no filter experience has the ability to drill down and select very specific things within the Revit project. Or if you are a filter user, it lets you leverage those to even make faster, more powerful ways to select groups of content based upon parameter values. And so if I wanted to, let me go to 3D view here. Actually, instead of picking stuff on the outside of the building, let me go to a floor plan view. So I'll just open up O1 floor plan here. And for our first selection, we'll deal with walls of a particular kind. Now, let me back up and say, what do you have access to within Revit to make smart selections? Well, you've got a couple of choices. If you see one wall type that's the one that you mean to have selected, you can select it, right click, and you can choose to select all instances in the view or the project. What that's going to let you do, and I'll say in the whole project, is it will grab every one of that wall type all throughout the project or all within that view. That's pretty powerful. That's out of the box Revit. Another feature that you have is if I want to select all walls, I can just do a quick window across everything. I know that seems counterintuitive if you don't do this, and click the filter down here, check none, and check walls. And I can see it will select 275 walls, interior, exterior, all of that. It's grabbing all of the walls, at least that I can see here in floor O1, which probably won't be all the walls actually. And then you could set some filters if you wanted to do some other granularity other than that. Let me show you the type of granularity that I'm talking about with Quick Select. So I fire it up, and Quick Select is one of those that you're going to use it quite a bit. It launches fast, so I don't necessarily leave it running, but this is one that you would consider leaving running if you're trying to figure out a project and make some selections, or if things got real messy and you're trying to sort them out. So we've got two primary ways to make a selection. One is by filter. If you are a firm or an individual that is already utilizing filters within Revit, any of the filters that you already created are going to show up here, and you can pre-select according to those. You could update that selection and it will show up over here on the right according to the filter that was set. Or I can I could start with a filter selection and then deselect some things out of that selection set so I could subtract from it. Let me start with the easy case scenario though. We're going to start with a category selection. So meaning that I'm not going to leverage Revit filters to make this. I'm just going to grab it right now. And what this lets me do is reach inside of the Revit project and have access to every category of thing that's within here. And so if I scroll down to walls, in fact, I didn't have to scroll down. I could just start typing it in. And well, let me zoom off of it here. Yeah, so it wants to auto-complete for me here. But we'll select walls. And then it took about a quarter of a second there. I saw it with an hourglass, but it looked inside of all of the walls and looked up all of the parameters, both instance and type. And you can see in parentheses at the end, it specifies whether it's instance or type. And that kind of granularity is nice because Revit doesn't ever really spell it out for you unless you're over here. But we're going to look for fire rating. So we're going to make a selection of walls that have a fire rating. And now we can choose language modifiers here for, is well, in this case, not greater than, equal to, because this is text, but is equal to. And I could type in here, but even more powerful than that, if I hit the down arrow, it looks inside at every value that's in the project and enumerates them in the list. Luckily, in my case, there's only one that's been done. So there are some 1 hour walls that have been set. So I can choose that, and I'm going to replace my selection set. So that one I did before, it's going to throw that away, and I want to update it, and it will refresh this tree over here on the right. And here's the category selection. There's 143 walls that have a 1 hour fire rating. I can expand this out for more granularity. And underneath this, I've got, of course, all walls are system families, so they're all underneath this, meaning you can't have an RFA file of a wall. It's actually, you have to duplicate it. But underneath this, it looks like there are four families of wall. And then each one of those, these are now at the instance level here. And notice in real time over here that the selection's already made. They're already blue over here on the left side. And I maybe zoomed out a little bit too far for this, but I can uncheck a type and it's no longer blue. You saw several of them deselect. And so it's updating the selection in real time, and you can deselect individual instances of walls. Unfortunately, they're all named the same, so you might have to experiment if that's what you're trying to do. In some cases, it may be easier to just hold down Shift and come over here and click them to deselect them individually that way. But we've got a very powerful selection set here. I hit OK, and now there are 143 of these walls that have a 1 hour rating that I currently have selected. And so I might want to, make a change to some of the properties for that. In this case, we could actually run back to the quick select tool, and I can replace the selection set. I can utilize that same search feature. It actually doesn't take that long to punch it back in here. So we'll go to fire rating, value of 1 hour, update that selection set. And from this, out of these different types, it may be that this wall type, the D type here, needs to be replaced with a correct wall type. And so I can uncheck these others, and it's got 12 of them selected. Also, it's looking through the whole project. It's not just this floor plan here. You can change that too. You can go to active view or the current selection as well. But I want it to grab all through the whole project where these wrong walls exist. Hit OK. Those walls are selected. And if I've already got the new wall in, then I can just change it right here in the type selector in one swoop. Or, if it's not selected, I go and edit type, and I could change the structure of this wall and make it the correct wall type and fix it in place. If we need to add another layer of chipboard or change the thickness of it. All right. So just in selecting wall types with specific parameter values, and that's just one example. That's one way that I use it, is to grab wall types of a certain kind. It's more powerful than that. Let me jump back into it and just kind of give you an idea of some of what's available here. If we choose, doors out of this list, and it looks at all the parameters that are available in here, I've got no business trying to select a door according to its Omni class number. That's just not how I operate, but I've got that option here. I've got, panel insets. If some of them had the wrong inset, I could find them and change them or replace them. Just really any kind of parameter that's associated with a door, I could reach in, see what values do exist for it. Trying to pick one here now. Ooh, by design option too. Let me stick with fire rating. And so we've got no fire rated doors. That may be a problem. That's just kind of a heads up to me, but this looks in and sees if there are any values set and allows me to select by that. All right. So if I were to choose add to selection set, that does, all of these do exactly what it sounds like it will do. If I make another choice here, it will throw more doors into the tree over here on the right. If I choose remove from the selection set, then whenever I change these values here, it's going to subtract those out of the tree. And normally you're going to choose replace selection set. You want it to be a fresh grab that you update, and then it will grab and put them over here on the right. You've also got some abilities over here because this one doesn't allow me to zoom and click in and do things on the side. While I can see stuff, but I can't actually change the zoom in this case. But if I can do things like isolate these doors and just see them. So I might choose isolate elements out of here on the right. And now I can see all of these doors that have, well, all doors, because they don't have any value for the fire rating. And then I can expand this out and uncheck some of them that I might need to. If I'm panned over to the side or something, I can hit these binoculars and it will choose a zoom to center it up and zoom out just a little bit to let me see everything. And so it's got those tools here to just be able to affect that visibility. You can reset it, or I could hit cancel and it would reset it and put everything back the way it was. Quick select is one of those things that saves you seconds each time you use it. If you're doing something really complicated, there's almost no other way to do it other than quick select or a whole bunch of control clicking to add to your selection set and kind of manually curating it that way. But quick select's definitely a go-to tool for you, and it's absolutely free inside of this. Now I'm going to move on to my favorite one, which is the renumbering tool. Renumbering solves it, and I don't I really don't even care which firm you work for. This is a problem. Anytime that you're doing something as an architect, engineer, interior designer, there's zero chance that you will number, excuse me, number all of your rooms correctly, doors correctly, whatever equipment that you're numbering. You can't put it in the correct order that it should finally be in. I've never been able to do it. I think that if you're doing that kind of design, that might be kind of a soul-sucking design if you already know what the end product's going to be before you even start. But anyways, you've got to renumber it. That is always this kind of classic dance that we have to do where that number is already taken and you say, yes, I know, Revit, let me have that number for a little bit and I will change the other one. This lets you renumber several things within Revit, not just rooms, not just doors. Those are the big ones. Absolutely, those are huge ones. That's going to save me over a year. That's probably going to save me more than an hour. It's probably just rooms and doors. And then you get into the other things Renumbering Tool does. This one's a no-brainer when you're putting together an ROI. If you're looking at whether or not, you know, the BIM Project Suite delivers value, especially when you're $0 in using it, it's absolutely paid for itself. It's provided zero value. But you click on the Renumbering Tool to start it up, and it is organized by tabs. So each thing that you might want to renumber is listed here with a discrete tab. Your two most popular ones are these first two tabs. So we'll do this in order. You know, we'll kind of go from left to right here. If you need to renumber rooms, there's not that many blanks that you need to work with here. And this one is truly modeless. This one I can zoom in and out, and it doesn't even steal the focus. Notice this stays blue. And so I can at any point click over here and change a value while I'm working within it. Right now, I don't see any room numbers on here. Let me see if those have been, I'm going to guess they haven't been created, but let me have a look around here. Okay, we've got a view template that's been assigned. So let me unassign that real quick. Don't save, don't auto save. So I'll scroll down to change the view template, throw off the yoke of oppression here. I'll go to no view template, hit apply. Now I can jump in visibility graphics and we'll see if we've got rooms unchecked. Nope, they're on, they're just not there. So if we want to assign a bunch of room tags to this, I can see that rooms are there. I saw an X flag, yeah, like right there. Then to assign them, we go to annotate and we can choose tag all, not tagged. Choose, you know what, let's go ahead and do doors too and room tags. We'll hit apply and okay. I know they're numbered wrong. That's fine. I'm about to fix that. So I can zoom in here. And the way I was taught, at least here in Arkansas, is that your room numbers should start with 101 on the first floor, and it goes around as you were visiting the project in a clockwise fashion. I've been around, and some people say counterclockwise, but most people are in agreement that you try to number it according to how you visit the building. Then the owner gets their own idea of how they want to have it numbered, and you get to renumber it all again if that's part of your services. But here, I would like for this vestibule to be 101. They actually didn't create it, I guess, because it's not a heated space. So we'll make entry 101. Right now, unfortunately, it's 128, and there's just a real randomness to the number scheme here. And to fix this, we've got a few different options here. The primary one that you want to know about is start sequence with. I want it to start with 101. Now, the problem that you run into when you manually renumber these is if I renumber 128, I bet it would say there's already a 101. Do you acknowledge this? Like there would be this pop-up that it's, you know, the Revit dummy pop-up in the bottom right. That is technically a warning. It allows you to say, okay, or hit the X, and it lets you go on your way, and it will allow you to have two room 101s. Later on with grids and detail numbers, you will actually get an error. Revit is not okay with you having two grid numbers with the same number. So we're going to start with room 101. If I wanted to put in like a dash, well, if this were building A, you know, if we had a multi-building campus, but similarly done, I might put this is building A. So that'll be the prefix and it would make it A101. Let me take that out. I almost never do that. Or you could put in like a dash, A is a suffix. So 101-A is how it would number, and then 102-A. Again, I don't normally need those options, so I'm just going to choose 101, and then I want to check auto swap room number. That means I never get a pop-up down here that says, hey dummy, there's already a room 101. Hey dummy, there's already a room 102. That's the main reason I'm using the renumbering tool, is so it just, if there is a 101, it will hot swap this number with that one. It will send, in this case, 128 over to wherever 101 is and swap them so that there is never a problem. So we choose renumber. And now all I've got to do is go around and hover over each space and click on it. Now it's kind of hard when you're hunting for the X, as I call it, because this one's way up here. So before I even do this, let me do one other trick, and hopefully you know this, but go to Visibility Graphics, scroll down to Rooms, expand this, and check these bottom two check boxes. That will put a blue flooded field and the physical X on the space and make it real easy. See what I mean? Real easy to find where you need to click. And I'm just going to leave this on for a minute while I renumber this very rapidly. So we start with 101, choose to renumber, pretend I'm visiting the building. Boom, here first, made that 101. Then maybe I peek in at the stairs, then the elevator, and man, it goes as fast as you can find and click these. Then there, I should zoom in more so you can actually see the numbers change. Okay, so it did swap that one out, and I did get an error. It's sending it over there, but it just so happens that there was already one in use there. But nonetheless, it's pretty quickly cleared. That one's 106. I won't renumber the whole building because you guys are getting the point here, but it starts to pick up in speed. And if I go around and visit all of these, it actually will correct the duplicates that are happening there. If I get interrupted, it is sequencing with me here. And so I should just be able to go right back to this and click on renumber again, and then start back where I left off. If you need to, then you can recursively, I can skip numbers. You know, if we're not going to use 113 because of bad superstition, you know, I can punch ahead to 114 and go back to the renumber tool and put that gap in there. And it's enumerating up here and showing me what my next click will yield. So that is all there is to renumbering rooms. And that itself, just on this project, if I weren't using the renumbering tool and I had to have a schedule open with it and go through and fix all the gaps, and then later on we add closets, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to resequence all of that again unless I've got a tool that's going to do it real easily for me like that. And so this is going to save me a significant amount of time per floor on a project like this. Okay, so aside from rooms, let's jump to the next one, because rooms is a big deal, but doors, there's actually more doors than there are rooms on a typical floor plan. And so this one's actually even going to save you more time. These two in the firms that I've worked for typically start at 101 and escalate up. About 75% of the firms that I talk to and ask about this, that's how they do it. And about 25% do room-based numbering. You can see that that's an option down here. And that is fantastic for that 25% crowd that have to figure out the room-based numbering scheme and then make mistakes about, oh no, the door swung out of that space instead of into it. You know, those types of mistakes can be pretty prevalent in that workflow, and it's very manual. But if you just want to start at 101, I mean, it's this easy. You tell it to start at 101, auto swap, choose renumber, and off you go. But I'm going to demonstrate how it does the room-based numbering, just to kind of show you a couple of other facets to, you know, the intelligence, I guess, of how the number scheme works here. So if I choose room-based numbering, I get a choice, and I've asked around that 25% that choose to number doors by room, and I ask them, do you normally do to room or from room? And everybody says it depends. And when I ask them what they mean by that, they end up giving me terrible answers of, well, it depends on if it's like a main room or if it's a small room, or they have judgment that they make on that. Well, this lets you do that judgment in real time. While you're in the middle of renumbering, you can come over here and say, oh, now I want to go from room, and then pick right back up with the number sequencing. Okay, and this is looking at the phase too. I mean, this gives me access to create these door tags in the correct phase that they're in. So I might have existing, new construction, and maybe owner phase if later on the owner is going to name or number doors however they see fit and have me do it. So I can choose to room. And that way it's going to look at entry 101. And my expectation is the very first door that well, let me not tell you what it's going to do. We'll just show you. Click on renumber. And now whenever I hover over a door, I click on this door and it should go from 149, goes to 101. Now, if you're used to seeing it say A or B, well, then the next door that swings to the room or into the room, when I click on it, watch what happens. It makes this one 101B and it redoes this one as 101A. So it senses that there are now multiple doors into this space, and it backwards corrects the other doors that are pointing into that space in the order they were clicked on. So I could go around the room and it will not use A or B because it's just going to simply, there's one door here. And if I found a second one, then it would redo it. So I just go around. There's no all open office. So that's anticlimactic. 109 now to match that one. And you just go around. Excuse me. I might use that previous quick select tool and isolate just the doors so that I could see them. That would actually be an amazing way to do this and not miss any doors as I'm kind of going around visiting it here. But when you're through, you hit the escape as it tells you to do down here. And now it is out of that modeless state back here where this is now a primary selection. So you can renumber the entire, and I didn't put you guys through that, but you can renumber all of the doors in this floor plan. That's going to save me several minutes and give me no errors on renumbering, especially when I'm doing it by room. That number is not already going to be taken. So it's just going to take care of that for me. Now, grids. This one is less of a big deal, but it's a big deal in what I stated earlier. Revit will not allow you to have two grid A's at any point in time. So if you goof up and you type grid A, but there's already one, Revit says, nope, try again, pick something else, anything else. And you say, how about B? And it's like, no, I got a B too. So what grids does is it lets you, even if there is a grid A, it will hot swap it from whichever one was A. So here we can see that there's already a 2 here, and you can tell I'm not a structural engineer because I'm about to make that one a 2. And so what I'll do is with grids selected, I'll choose start the sequence with 2, and I can do letters and it will figure out the sequencing just like Revit does. It's smart that way. It can, see that you're using the last thing as a letter or a number. And I do have to have auto swap grid number for this to work its magic here. We'll start with, I need to choose renumber. Renumber, now it's turned modeless. Come over here and click this. Look at that, it swapped the K and the 2. And as a non-structural engineer, it lets me wreak my havoc on the rest of the plan. So maybe a bad thing that this one's in the hands of all Revit users, but it can make, especially if you've got a large project that has many grid lines in it, you're never going to receive that error that makes you renumber, which is what causes, if we're honest, causes structural engineers to make 2.4 and 2.5. They're just, too lazy to resequence it all. So they just create a unique number inside of that. Here, I can make this one, K, LM, and just kind of keep going. Hit escape when you're done. And this will handle grid numbers. I'm not going to do, I've already shown you 3 ways it does this. So with detailed numbers, I'll just explain these last 2 here. David Gear is saying he likes the door renumber to room. Yeah, it is amazing. If you're one of the 25% that do things that way, that one's a crowd pleaser for those individuals. It's not too hard to renumber 101, but again, on a floor plan this size, that's probably going to save me maybe 10 or 15 minutes, doing that just this one time. So it's going to be a real nice ROI for the cost of free. So here with detail numbers, this one also would return an error. And this is talking about like on a sheet, you've got view number 1 is the first thing you drag onto a sheet. Second thing you drag on, it'll make it number 2, unless you've got something tricky set up in your template. But this allows you to renumber that sequence and make it, F21 or whatever your numbering. You're probably like most people, and you just go 1 through 10 or however many things you can cram onto the sheet and just keep it numerical. This will allow you to go from left to right, or that's how most people do it, left to right, top to bottom, and renumber stuff very painlessly, so you don't have to do that dance where you skip several numbers and you make a Well, I'll make this view number 99 to get it out of the way because there's probably no other 99. And then you come back to it and finally can assign it the number it needs to be. So this does the same thing there. Just choose auto swap detail number. I think it ought to have that checked by default. I should probably put that in the recommended features. Just make it automatic. It's automatically swap it. But you can start your view number sequence with 1, click through a sheet very quickly. If you've dragged 24 pictures of a rooftop onto a sheet, then you can choose your start sequence number with, after you get them all, in the order that you want them in, choose 1, hit renumber and click 24 times, and it will have renumbered them all in less than a minute. I promise you, it will save you a good bit of time with that. Now, as you get trickier, if you're a firm that is using shared parameters and you are starting to document and tag, smart tag equipment and all kinds of things inside of your Revit project, if you're an interior designer, maybe you've started using a shared parameter for an art tag number, or if you're doing an art plan. I've only worked on 2 projects that had art plans, but you probably have to make some custom stuff if you delve into that. But here underneath the general tab, and it tells you right up here at the top, this is going to allow you to painlessly renumber anything that has a mark parameter, and everything has a mark parameter. It's a system parameter. It's baked in to every family that's created inside of Revit. So if I'm creating art, as long as I number that artwork underneath the mark parameter, so not the type mark, but the mark, which is an instance parameter, then and that's uniquely done, then the tag will show up in a plan, and I can resequence it in the same way that it does rooms and grids and detail. Doors can be by room, but this one won't let you do it by room, but you can sequence it in order with numbers or letters, and each one you click on, it will iterate to the next number or letter and swap out any other values that you have. So it's not just even limited to rooms, doors, grids, and detail numbers. It now is literally any family inside of Revit, because they all have mark parameters. You can resequence them. If you have a tag that's pointing to that, then you will see that change happen. If you don't have a tag, it'll still make the change to the mark parameter. You just won't see it on a plan. So renumbering tool, in my estimation of all the ones I'm showing you to here, is going to be the most powerful one, the one that gives you the most time savings if you're most people. And so definitely dig into this one. And actually, for this tool in quick select alone, I think it's worth downloading the free trial to use those 2 particular tools in perpetuity. Of course, also, I think that if you're going to download, well, let me get to the value aspect a little bit later. I got one more tool to show you. If I go to the CTC Software tab here, underneath renumbering, you don't see it, but there is a Revit detail is a tool that's inside of Revit. And in fact, if you go to their website, it will list it as well, but it does not exist as a tool on the toolbar. Let me drag over a Windows. Actually, I need to browse to a file real quick. So give me a second here. We look on the desktop. Do I have a Revit project? Indeed, I do. All right, so I've got a Revit project here. It works with families as well, but in the Windows Explorer environment, select any RFA family or select any RVT project, right-click on it, and instead of going to Properties, which is the Windows Properties, go to Revit Properties. If you've installed your BIM Project Suite, then it will show up with Revit Properties. It is a free tool, so it will continue working for you. If I click Revit Properties, it surfaces some data that would be harder to see. So this will report the year version that it was created in. Of course, if you've got Revit 2020, it is doing that already. If you open it up from within Revit 2020, it will now tell you what year that content was created in. But this lets me do it right from the Windows environment. If I've got a folder set up or I'm looking at an archived project, I can figure out which version it's using without Revit asking me if I want to update it and me saying, no, because if you update a file, it updates the only version of that. I'm sure none of y'all have made that mistake. But it also lists the build that it was done with. So if you've got team members that are on different builds, you can make sure that it was done in the correct basis for that format, or for what you should be running as the most current. You can see where the file's situated. You probably knew that because you just grabbed it from there. And you've just got a couple of other pieces of information. The main one, again, is going to be which year the content was created in. And I can also choose to open it within that correct year version. Now, here it was done in 2020, but if this was done in 2019, it would give me the option, because I do have Revit 2019 installed, to open it within that. So this will, and to me, this is actually the main thing that it does for you. It lets you not just double click. How many of you guys have double clicked a file and it opened it in Revit 2020 and assumed you wanted to upgrade it? Here, it lets me see which one and then choose the appropriate year to open it up within. All right, so that's access. That is Revit Properties. Just right click on any family or project within the Windows environment and choose Revit Properties, and it's hidden away there. I didn't even know about this until not too long ago because it was so well hidden. All right. Well, we are right here at 3:07, so I have used up your time. These were exactly the tools that I wanted to be able to show you. Just a second here. And so this concludes our webinar, BIM Project Suite free tools. As you can see, that the free tools are powerful, time-saving tools. If any of you guys are interested in learning more about the other BIM Project Suite tools, we would welcome the opportunity to have one-on-one conversation or one-to-many with your team to be able to show you more tools and what they can do for you. You can just shoot an email to me. You can see, well, my smiling face there on the left, or to our webinar organizer, Sean Prince, and we'll get in contact with who your your account manager is, and determine next steps for getting a demo set up for you. At this time, I'm going to take a look over in the chat and see if we have any questions that have queued up. Let's see. I like the door renumbers, mostly government. So mostly government work is what David is using to renumber by room. Yeah. So renumbering by room, if you don't have this tool, that's a very manual process. And I've always had to just print out the whole set and just carefully go through with a pen and make the determination. Here, it's as fast as you can click and it will get the room correct. It's not going to say, it's not going to get it wrong that you have the door going out of the room. It will know.